Hello everyone and welcome. In this presentation, I'm going to teach you how to use the Advocates Kit that we've created to help you make the case to your colleagues for implementing Acrolinx. And so what the kit consists of is these slides, video instructions, and a couple of spreadsheets. If you have any interest in further help on this, please send an email to your Acrolinx account manager or send an email to info@acrolinx.com. I know that's a very impersonal email address, but real humans read it and will respond. So this slide deck is divided into three main sections. First off, how to align with executive goals. We'll start with the process of figuring out how do you get your mind wrapped around what executives need to hear in terms of building a presentation for implementing Acrolinx. And then also, how do you align with other departments? Which ones should be involved? And how do you talk with them? I've got slides specifically for that. And then the third part is slides that you can use. You can copy them out of this slide deck into your own template. I'm even going to show you how to do that with PowerPoint, and then adjust them for your own business case. So let's begin with executive alignment. Now, as someone who loves language the way we love language, we know what you care about. We talk to you and people like you all the time, and you, of course, are all about a language that communicates effectively, that can be translated easily, and that engages with your audience. And so, compliance with style guide, improving translatability, reducing effort, improving findability. All of these things are things that you care about in terms of improving language, including, and last but certainly not least, supporting your content strategy. Your organization may have a larger view of what you want to do with your content, and of course part of what you care about is to support that strategy. But you can imagine your executives aren't thinking about the same things. They're thinking about, how do I improve revenue? How do I, in order to improve revenue, how do I improve, say, customer experience or increase customer satisfaction, expand geographically, get to market faster, perhaps reduce liability costs or other risks, and other areas that, of course, at a very high level your executives are going to care about. Now, if you're working for a very large company that's public and publishes an annual report, it's a good idea to take a look at that annual report and see what your executives are promising to your investors. It may be that they're talking about some of these issues. The first step is getting aligned, though, with what your executives care about, and then speaking to them in their terms, not in your terms. So if they care about customer experience, you should be talking about how you can offer a better customer experience by delivering content that's consistent at every touch point during the customer life cycle. Or if they're concerned about customer satisfaction or customer support, there's areas that you can talk about there. So connect what executives care about as a starting point, and then back it up with what you care about with the things that you're going to be focused on. So they're both important. You're going to make a case for improving language, but you're going to make that case in the context of improving some bottom line business result that executives care about. Now, I can't emphasize this next point enough. Every single proposal that your executives deal with includes a cost-cutting component to that proposal. Almost every single one. So you can't compete on the basis of cost savings alone. They're important, but they're not sufficient. What's more important than cost savings is contributing to your company's high-level goals. So I know I've said that 3 times now. It's about executive alignment, and they care about achieving goals. Rarely do you find companies where the only goal is to cut costs. It does happen, but usually there's a strategic component that goes along with it. So cutting costs is part of your story. It's not even the lead part of your story. It's the way you pay for Acrolinx, not the reason for adopting Acrolinx. So business cases, therefore, have these two foundations. What's the strategic fit, and what's the quantifiable value? So let's talk about those. The starting point for delivering a proposal that connects with your executives is metrics that are clear and distinctive and meaningful, and so relevant. Right? So the relevant metrics are not your own department statistics. It's not about how many words you write, how many pages you publish, how many different formats you have to put your information out in, how much more work you're doing than you've ever done before. They don't find that interesting. That sounds like whining. what they care about in terms of metrics are the ones listed on the right. Customer satisfaction, customer surveys, customer engagement, such as how many times do people view a page, how long do they spend on a page, how about comparing to other industry benchmarks. That's the kind of thing that you need to be delivering to your executives. Now, there may be some relationship that you need to bring up about that comes from your own work, such as, well, our product life cycle has dropped in half over the last 3 years, and therefore we have to work twice as fast. That can be relevant to your case, but it can't be your case. So much later on in this presentation, I'm going to show you some results from an IBM survey that they have done, and they still have ongoing, talking about the importance of high-quality technical information to their customers. And I included this survey in this presentation so you could see exactly the form they follow. And there's a link at the bottom of the slide to this survey. My advice to you is do this immediately. Put your own survey up on your website immediately that your customers can see, and get them to start giving you their answers about how they feel about the importance of technical documentation. So in about 30 more slides, you're going to see what IBM's metrics have discovered, but it won't surprise you to know that according to IBM's customers, documentation is considered to be a very important part of the product. It has an influence on their purchase decision, it has an influence on their perception of product quality, and even on the overall company. So my advice is get started today with this survey. And in fact, this next slide has the rest of the survey. You may want to adapt this a bit for your own purposes, of course, but this gives you an idea of the kind of questions they're asking. Very simple, very easy for your audience to fill out. You could also promote the survey via a mailing, via your newsletter, via something else, but get people to start filling this out so that when you go to make a proposal, when you go to deliver metrics and build your case, you've got some strong metrics to start with. And I think this is a very easy starting point. And also consider how you package yourself. I was a technical writer a very long time ago, when that's all we called ourselves was tech writers. There was no other word. But these days, there may be better ways to repackage what you do. Instead of talking about tech docs or tech pubs, perhaps consider another way to talk about yourself. Now, of course, this will take some alignment with your management, but Juniper Networks, for example, changed from calling themselves tech docs to calling themselves IX, or information experience. Microsoft talks about user assistance. Cisco talks about knowledge products. So that's a way of elevating the importance of what you do, perhaps getting your executives to think in a different way about what you do simply by changing your name. So let's talk about what works as you go through this process of building your case to implement Acrolinx, to get the funding for Acrolinx, and to get the support for implementing Acrolinx. What is it that works? Well, first off, as in any situation where you're communicating, it's about connecting with your audience, understanding what their goals are, what their concerns are, and omitting jargon, irrelevant details, other things that you may care about but they don't care about. And in this case, it is, I know it's a cliche, but really less is more. The more you give them, in some respects, the less impact it has. Think about what your central message is and focus on that and reiterate that again and again and again. Next point, show that you can be innovative. You're not just following, but you're setting, you're a thought leader within the organization. Anticipate what the needs are. Talk about the next generation. Talk about the impact of current developments on what you're doing, the impact of social, the impact of the cloud, the impact of whatever the buzzwords of the day are. Talk about that in relation to what you're doing and where you need to go. The third point, you need to show maturity in how you behave. For example, and this is so important, when you position what your requests are, position it in terms of, here's a solution that will help us as a company achieve our corporate goals. Not, I have a problem and I want you to solve it. Another way to show maturity, of course, is sticking to your budget. You probably can think of other ways as well. The fourth point, as I mentioned before, be prepared with metrics that are connected to the company's goals, connected to the business. Customer satisfaction and customer perception about the importance of technical documentation, the quality of your own technical documentation, can be a big driver for to get executive attention. Telling them what customers say is vastly more powerful than telling them what you think. And finally, build relationships. Make sure that all the stakeholders who were part of this decision are aligned and supportive, even to the point, and I got this from someone who at a conference who addressed this topic in a similar topic, talked about even dressing the part, looking like the executives look, not just, and talking, of course, in the language the executives speak. Okay, so we've talked about alignment with executives. I hope that's really clear to you. I know I pushed on that really hard, but I can't emphasize enough the importance of talking to your audience, connecting to your audience. You do need to get other departments aligned. But it starts with, what is the process for coming up with a decision to implement something like Acrolinx, to make any sort of technology investment? There is a point where you lay out your own objectives, you assess the feasibility of implementing those objectives, and consider the products that are available, and the process changes you have to make, and the technologies you have to deal with in order to implement. And then, of course, to develop a solid plan, put together a proposal that includes timelines, costs, and any risk assessment of their impacts. And then finally get to that point where you give the presentation, you get approval, and then, of course, you go to implementation and finally maintenance. Know what your process is going to be. Be able to articulate that process to those that you're going to encounter along the way. And of course, you want to be able to show to your executives that you understand how this process works. You understand what their role is in it, and you understand what the other executives or other managers or other influencers in the decision, where they come into this process. For example, you're talking about adopting technology. IT cares about technology. They may even think they own all the technology that happens in the organization. So you need to get them on your side. And so when it comes to pulling all these pieces together, there's lots of specific examples of things you have to worry about as you go through this entire decision-making process. So I'm not going to spend time on each of these bullet points today, but do read these and think through them carefully. But it's not just knowing the process, it's also getting help with the process. It starts with setting out your objectives. What are your objectives? Get an executive to sponsor it. Maybe your boss or your boss's boss, but that's a great starting point well, that's not the first starting point, right? We talked about gathering metrics, and of course you have to think through all of this before you go out to get an executive sponsor. But then you can see other departments you need to work with along the way, like finance, IT, find a good project manager within the organization, bring in Acrolinx professional services at the right point, and of course make sure that your users, your authors, your reviewers, your translators, make sure that they're on board. It's important to know who can influence the decision, who can stop you, for example. Typically that's IT and finance. Who pays? It may be one or a combination of departments, but know who pays for the implementation of Acrolinx. Also know who approves. How do you go about approving it? Is there a capital expense committee? Is it some sort of a budget committee? Is there a finance committee? Or is there some other group that makes the final decision? And then finally, who's affected by the implementation of the system? All of these groups matter to getting approval and, of course, to a successful implementation that makes you look good. So before you propose, proposing is only one step in a journey that starts considerably before. Gather metrics. And when I talk about what's listed on the right side of slide 10, I'm talking about customer satisfaction, customer perceptions. You can see that list. You can go back and see that list later. But it's the metrics that matter to executives. And then evangelize those metrics. That's a good starting point. You don't have to say where you're going. Just say where you are. What have you learned? It's a way of warming them up to what you're going to talk about next. This is a process, not one single hill to climb. And then adjust your message, adjust your slides for your audience. For example, let's say you're talking to IT. Our suggestion is that stick to the facts of what you're trying to do. I think you need to stay away from the softer points of language improvement and stick to the hard aspects of improving translatability, improving consistency, improving readability, kind of things that you can explain to an IT person and communicate to them very effectively. Talk about the technology, of course, but also explain the strategy. What are you trying to do for the company? And some messages, you might talk about the architecture of Acrolinx, for example, and these are some bullet points to consider using when you're talking to IT people. Finance is another important influencer. They are the ones who can also say no. They're going to want to understand your analysis, your proposal quantitatively. How will this affect costs? What is it going to cost? And what sort of savings can be expected? But like everyone else, they're going to understand what you're trying to accomplish for the company. And the messages, of course, for finance are this system is designed to pay for itself over time with savings in these areas, hard savings as well as softer savings. And you'll see later a tool that we've got with a spreadsheet to help you make that case. One more I want to talk through in some depth, and after that we'll lighten up on this, but marketing can be a big influencer in this process. Maybe they can't say no, but marketing can certainly be very supportive, especially if technical documentation is reporting up into marketing. But for them, it's about big picture, and it's about customer impact. How do you drive revenue? And here's some suggested messages. If your marketers talk about customer experience, and in many organizations, that's one of the top concerns of marketing executives. And if it is one of their concerns, then what they're after is high quality and consistent interactions at every customer touch point. And content plays a huge role there. And so I think they can be easily persuaded, I think, to believe the importance of content in that. Content marketing, if that's an area that they're talking about, if you haven't heard of content marketing, you should understand a bit more about it. But content marketing depends on having high quality content, not just a great story, but also language that is readable, understandable, gets the fluff and the pomposity out of the way so that people can focus on the content. And then finally, marketing certainly cares about branding and about consistency. Those are all areas where you can get marketing attention and support. But your support organization, your help desk, there are some messages you may want to consider giving to them if their support is important. And of course, with engineering, if they get involved in this at all, they're very factually driven. They want to know about the process, and again, it's better to stick to the harder side of what Acrolinx can do rather than the softer side. Legal and compliance, there may be a role for them as well. And finally, but certainly not least, operations cares about improving efficiency and effectiveness through automation, and that's a message that operations people should find resonates. You should find that it resonates with them very well. And finally, users. They're affected. They're not necessarily in the decision-making process. And I think you all know that, as probably a user yourself, the idea that a tool can tell you how to write better is not something that a professional writer likes to hear. I'm a professional writer. I understand that skepticism and that the challenge that creates. But I think that the best way to find out the impact of Acrolinx is to try it on text you've already done, you've already written. You will find issues. I happen to think that I'm very good at writing. Acrolinx finds issues with what I write, even when I think I've polished it. It still finds issues that I missed. And often it's because I'm looking at the same copy over and over again, and I get tired of reading every single word. But Acrolinx, of course, never gets tired of that. And in many companies, the style guide, the terminology can be huge, and there's no way for one writer to remember all of those things. And I think another important point is that by automating the process, by taking work out of the process, that should make the knowledge workers that you have even more important to the organization, because they can add even more value to the organization. And I think ultimately that's what should win users over, is this idea of, by automation, I can contribute more value to the organization, therefore I become more valuable. All right, now let's talk, now that we've talked about all the people who you need to influence over the course of this process, let's talk about putting this presentation together. Now, I'm going to do a bit of a shift here and show you how to use PowerPoint for something. I'm sure most of you know how, but I'm going to go ahead and take you through this very quickly. The last part of this slide deck contains a few slides that are decorated in this same format, where you see it says at the top, advocate content. That's content you don't want to present to your executives. So slides with this format that you're seeing here contain instructions. It's the undecorated slides that you should copy to your own template. So these slides are for you to use and improve. Now you can see that they're in the 4x3 format, which is the old style PowerPoint format. It's the old style, before we had widescreen laptops and monitors on our desks, and lots of companies still use this smaller format. However, if you need the widescreen format, let us know. Let me know, and we'll create a widescreen version of this. I'm just waiting for someone to ask. Once you've taken these slides and converted them to your format, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment, then remove any slides that are not relevant to your story. Modify the remaining ones as needed. You'll see where to do that. In some cases, I put square brackets there to make it explicit where you should put your own content in. And then you may want to decorate them with your own graphics. You may want to add some animation. And of course, adapt them for your different audiences. There's some slides before here. Before this point, you may want to take some content out of those and create slides for, say, your IT people or your marketing team. Make those kind of changes. So let me take you through that process of copying these to your own presentation template. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and open a presentation template. I should have had it open already. And here we are. So imagine this is your template. I'm sure you have a much nicer one than this, but imagine that one's yours. Now let's go ahead and take the slides that are in this undecorated format. So it starts here at the bottom. Let me scroll that up a bit. It starts here at the bottom, and you can see, if you look carefully, that there's a couple of slides. This one, I know there's one later, this one. Those two are decorated, so those are just instructions to you. But all the other ones are not decorated, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab them all from here to the end, copy them. I'm going to use Control-C, go to the other presentation format, and then just paste, Control-V. Now they're all in there. I'll take out this first one, and I'm going to go ahead and start making changes. I mentioned the square brackets before. You want to replace this with your own project name. And now you can see, I'm going to go back to the other slides, so don't read these in detail, but now you can see that I've taken these slides, and when you drop it into PowerPoint, they will just automatically adapt to the template, if you've built the template correctly. If you haven't built the template correctly, then you'll have some work ahead of you. But I built these slides correctly so that they would drop into a correctly built template. Now I mentioned to you there's a couple of slides that were not in this undecorated format. For those two slides, you'll see that there's this red text at the bottom. So it's a reminder that you should not include those slides in your presentation. If I scroll down through here, there it was. Here's the other one. So I copied it over to make it easy rather than dropping those two out, but now you see the point. I hope you see the point. So let's go back to these are the slides now that you're going to present to your colleagues. Ultimately, you're going to present them to the finance committee, to the executives, to whoever makes the final decision on whether or not to go through with this project. And let me suggest that calling yourself an Acrolinx advocate is probably not a good idea. Likewise, calling this the Acrolinx project is probably not a good idea. So there are some alternatives. We put in here links to a couple of websites that can help you. This is called behindthename.com, and you could choose a name from mythology, or here's one called acronymcreator.net. You go to that website, try to figure out what you want to call this thing. Well, you want to call it something, not Acrolinx, but say, Introduction to the Phoenix Project, Rising from the Ashes. Actually, that's not a good one. Don't do that one. But something appropriate. Or inappropriate. It doesn't really matter. Just give it a name other than Acrolinx. And then, again, this is your opening slide. We have an opportunity, executive team, to reinforce our customer support strategy, our geographical expansion strategy, our customer satisfaction strategy, whatever that strategy is, we have an opportunity to reinforce that strategy by optimizing our product documentation. So in this presentation, we're going to describe why we need to change, what alternatives we considered to addressing this need to change, what we recommend doing, and what the next steps are in this process. So, again, this is you presenting to your executive team. What's the status of our technical documentation today? Well, in the last 5 years, and this is one example, our cost for producing this documentation, say as a percentage of development cost, has dropped from 5% to 3.2%. But during the same period, expectations have gone up. Now, on the side here, this does sound a bit like whining, but this is just setting the stage. This isn't about you. This is about reinforcing the strategy. But it is important to set the stage for why you need more resources, why you can't just keep doing the things that you're doing, or get smarter about it. What you don't want to do, though, is talk about how miserable your world is, and if only they'd give you more people, everything would be nice. Everyone, that of course would be pointless. But think about how else your world is changing. And again, this is a slide that would not be in your presentation. And I've got some, I think, great examples for you to consider. And I'd like to talk about some of them. One of them certainly is content creation. In many organizations, content creation is moving outside of the professional writing group. You may be asking engineers or people in the support area or people perhaps in other geographies for whom English may not be their first language to create content. That could be, those are certainly important factors. That could be part of saying, here's how our world is changing. So again, you could change the previous slide based on your answer there. Are you delivering content in more languages than ever before? Chances are yes. As companies grow, you expand geographically, and the expectations on languages only go up. Are you increasingly finding that your customer base is global, that people who are consuming your content are non-native speakers? It may be that you have seen a noticeable increase in the number of people who are not native speakers using your content. So, for example, people, immigrants in the United States typically have to refer to the content in English. So, what can you do, as an example, that has an impact on their ability to understand your content? Have schedules tightened up? Have product development cycles collapsed? Have you perhaps switched to a lean development process or an agile development process? Do you or should you participate in social media? And there probably are others that you should consider, but those are the kinds of things that you should consider when you talk about how your world is changing, how the world is changing, and the impact it has on technical information. So this is back to your presentation. Show that you've already done something. Surely you have changed things. If you're a change agent at all, you've already done some things in your organization, or at least your predecessor has done some things in your organization to respond to the changes going on in the world around you. So talk about how you perhaps have adopted content management as a way of centralizing control and access to make sure that you have a single source of truth. You talk about how you've automated perhaps parts of the publishing process so you can deliver your content on multiple types of media without doing it all by hand. Talk about perhaps how you've modularized your information or made it possible to deliver personalized variations of your information. There's lots of things I'm sure that you've already done. But, of course, as a company, as a department, you can always do more. Now let's talk about the importance of documentation to our products. The only reason I can imagine that you're here looking at the Advocates Kit and considering this presentation is because documentation is vital to your customers' ability to select, implement, install, configure, operate, maintain your products, or perhaps your information is your product. But assuming that information is vital to your products, then here's an example of how you could present the importance of documentation, its impact on revenue, its impact on customer satisfaction and customer retention, as well as its impact on your own operational efficiency. So the coming slides will talk about each of those points in a bit more detail. So let's talk about revenue. This is a great, Sharon Burton does an annual survey. She sells her book at a very reasonable price on Amazon, but she publishes the survey results, the summary of her survey results for free. So I'm giving you some content that she's made available for free, but certainly a link to her book, or go buy her book if you'd like to get more detail. So according to her survey, and this is consumers across all types of products. So there may be people buying furniture as well as people buying routers and software and technical products and financial products. But 32% typically look at product instructions before they buy. That's an average number. We know it's much higher for products that are expensive or technical or otherwise have a higher level of risk associated with their purchase. Some other useful points to note for your executives. This first one on the left side is one I consider to be very important. The world has changed in the last 15 years thanks to the internet. In the old days, when a buyer wanted to become a customer of yours, very early on in the buying process, they would have to talk to a salesperson. So relationships with buyers were built by your own people. But these days, on average, 70% of the buying process is already complete before a prospect engages with a live salesperson. And as many of you know, from your own experience buying things, in some cases it's 100%. You never talk to anybody. You just make the decision on your own. What drives that decision? If you don't talk to anybody, the only thing that drives that decision is content. And that's the important point that's unspoken here, but that you should speak when you present to your executives. It's all about the content. Content is what's building relationships with buyers these days. And for the buyer to get to that 70% point before they talk to a salesperson means that your content has to have done the heavy lifting. And not just your content, of course. Your content is the key source, not the only source of information that buyers are going to use. So that's one role that documentation has, and that content has in general. But documentation, technical documentation, has a role in that purchasing process. It's not just marketing content that matters. Documentation, as this article said in Forbes some years ago, but still true today, it used to be thought of as this is strictly after the sale content. This is something customers don't even see or worry about till they've already bought the product. Then they open up the box, and then they start cursing the manual. That's not what happens anymore. Lots and lots of people are looking at the documentation before they buy the product. You saw the quote from the previous slide, 32%. In some cases, it's much higher. In this case, according to this article, some companies are saying documentation is bringing in sales leads. So it's not just driving purchase decisions, it's even driving awareness. It's clearly driving revenue. But I promised three things, right? Revenue, retention, and operational efficiency. So let's talk about retention. According to the survey, 94% of the people actually use product instructions. And you know that for a complex product, it's higher than that. 66% of them, only 2/3 said that product instructions only sometimes make sense. So that means 1/3 said they always make sense, but 2/3 say they only sometimes make sense. Only 20% roughly think that tech.quality is unrelated to the price they pay. The other 80% think it is related to the price they pay. And over half worry that bad documentation equals bad product. You'll see it's an even higher percentage later from IBM. And as you can see from the bottom one, only 11% of the people surveyed feel confident about the product if they're not confident about the tech docs. Okay, the final point, operational efficiency. What do people do when they run into problems? Well, the first thing they do is go to the company's website, either via Google, which means findability is very important, or they go directly. I've searched in vain for high-quality metrics on whether or not they search primarily through Google or primarily go to your website. I don't know which is the typical path, but I do know that Google is important to all of this. So whether they go to your company's website through Google or directly, they are going to your company's website to get your content. And you can see that 29% of the people in the survey reported that rather than fight through problems that they had, they just return their product and go elsewhere. Now maybe for your product that number is lower, but that would be a great number to know, wouldn't it? It certainly would be a great number to ask about. So the IBM survey doesn't ask that question, but there's some numbers in here you may want to consider adding to your survey. Then, what's the customer perception of value of technical documentation? Well, at a conference I attended last year, a couple of guys from Juniper Networks said that that their contacts at Cisco and Microsoft surveyed their customers to ask them what they think product documentation is worth as a percentage of the product cost. And you can see the range that they gave here. IBM, this is the survey I mentioned a long time ago. Here's the results of their survey so far of 189 clients and prospective clients. So you can see that 84% say that high-quality technical content is either important, that's the light blue, or very important, that's the dark blue, to their perception of the company. 93% said it's important or very important to their satisfaction with the product or solution. See, that's even higher than the numbers Sharon Burton talked about. 96% said the quality of tech docs was important or very important to their perception of the quality of the product. And then finally, almost 90% said the tech docs were important and very important to their initial purchase decision. That number I find perhaps strains belief a bit, but it's a powerful number. It shows just how important it is to the purchase decision. That may be the most powerful number in this entire presentation, and it's almost buried on this slide. So you should draw that out when you present it. SDL did a survey last year ago, August, asking similar sorts of questions. And what it revealed is high-quality product information is, according to the survey respondents, 82% said it's essential to good customer service. You can see the other numbers here. Again, this is a way of driving home what customers think in general about high-quality documentation. My hope is that at this point in the presentation, you're also giving your own metrics, your own survey results for how important your customers think technical documentation is. Now let's talk about the importance of high-quality content. So now we're shifting gears to, okay, we all agree that content is important. What aspects of that content are important, and why are they important? This Gartner quote, I think, is a fantastic one. Consumers no longer respond to anything but the most compelling content. I think the rest of the quote says something about, because marketers are inundated, or consumers are inundated with pleas for attention from marketers, from everybody. So they won't respond to content that's boring, that's hard to read, that's filled with jargon, that's difficult to understand. They just won't respond to that. They won't respond to anything unless it's of high quality. And these are the dimensions of quality that I believe are important. And change this list if you think something else is, but you've got to be able to find it. You've got to be able to read it and understand it. Ideally, it connects with you in some way. It uses a tone of voice. It uses an informal, warm style that actually talks to you as a human being and not talks at you. And because of all of those things, it spurs action. It gets you to do something. That's what great content is. Now, here's a couple of slides that I think is really that are really impactful. I got this from a presentation done a few years ago now from Gilbane, talking about this thing they call language afterthought syndrome. And it's a pattern of treating language requirements as secondary within content strategies and solutions. And they conclude that companies leak money and opportunity by failing to identify or address language issues is integral to that process, rather than doing something that you do rather than being something that you just do at the end, or you do at a couple of touch points. And this is part of getting your executives to agree that language, that content, is something that they have to focus on as part of their whole process and not just leave it till the end. So what are the symptoms of language afterthought syndrome? And here's some examples here. So think about these and think about how you want to include this in your own presentation. Maybe you want to leave this LAS stuff out. Maybe you've beaten the executives over the head too much. I've talked about quite a bit at this point. So let's go back to the executives. We can do even better with our product information. We can deliver it with language that's warmer and simpler and more engaging. We can speak with one voice, regardless of where it's created in the organization, geographically or based on department. We can speak with one voice to make it consistent and have that consistency of touch point from one end of the buyer's journey to the other. We can make it more translatable and therefore produce language that's better in other languages when it's translated. We can have more accurate, more consistent terminology and branding so that we're always, again, speaking with one voice. And then finally, certainly not least though, we can make it more findable so that people can we're putting the right keywords in the right places so that we first can get it found, and then we get it read. Now, the following slides, I want to connect content to business strategy. So the following slides are, you're going to pick and choose. There's, I don't know, 8 or 9 slides here. You've got to decide which of these slides, maybe 1, maybe 2, are the ones that will reinforce this, our strategy. What's our strategy as a company that we're trying to reinforce? And then, of course, you need to adjust the text. You may want to expand one of these slides. If, in the case where you're just using one slide, you might want to consider expanding it to multiple slides. And, of course, this slide should not be in your final presentation. So let's say it's a revenue growth strategy. The slide is, with great information, with better quality content, we will help our revenue growth strategy because customers are more likely to buy if they can more easily find our product information. And I'm sorry, but I just got to fix this while we're here. Because they can more, oh, great. All right, this part I need to cut out of the recording. This is terrible. I'm sorry. I can't believe PowerPoint's doing this to me now. Robin, can we switch to you being the presenter? Can you go to this slide, which was 49, so we can continue?
Yep, going there now.
Thank you. Sorry, everybody. But you see, we had a backup plan. And all because I wanted to change a misspelling. So, Robin, go. Let us know when you're ready.
Okay.
Sorry for this, everybody. Okay.
You see my screen?
Well, yes, I do. What would you change out to? That's fine. Let's just keep going. I'll figure it out later. More easily find out. Or maybe it could be find our. Either way. More easily find product information, more easily read it and understand it. And finally, even enjoy it. And then, by creating great information, it can have a halo effect on our other products. Great information creates a great customer experience, which creates the desire to come back and do it again. Next. Robin, next.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's not advancing.
Remember, you have to click on PowerPoint slide to get it back to PowerPoint control.
Yeah, now my screen's frozen. Of course, right?
Wait a moment. I wonder if there's something in this slide deck. Can't be.
Yeah, is yours working properly now?
No, PowerPoint's still hanging.
Mine too.
I'm shocked. The slate plans, right?
That's right.
Well, folks, how embarrassing are you? I'm really. It's hung.
Yeah, I can't even escape.
Can you escape to get out?
No.
Can you?
Nope.
Not even escape works.
Nope.
All right, I'm going to try something then. No problem. Let me just. I'm going to go ahead and why don't you go ahead and make me the presenter again? I'm going to kill PowerPoint.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to kill it. There. End it. That's right. I'll show my screen in a moment. I'm sorry, everybody. Well, that's funny. Now, Task Manager is hung. Oh, that's beautiful. Just beautiful. So don't do this, everybody. Don't do this during your presentation to executives. It's a very bad idea. Robin, do you have it back yet? This is out of the frying pan and into the fire here.
No, mine's stuck. Unfortunately.
I have seen this happen on my computer before. I know it clears up after a couple of minutes. I don't know what is going on. It drives me crazy. I think I need to just reinstall Windows again so that this doesn't happen. I'm not showing my screen because there's no point in looking at a dead screen. Robin, can't believe this is happening. We need a backup plan for the backup plan. Okay.
So what we can do is record the next part.
Wait a second. I think I'm getting it.
Yay.
Now even Task Manager won't close. Oh, this is driving me crazy. How can this be? Yes, I want to end it. Oh, thank goodness. I want to end it all. Okay. Now I'm going to start again. I'm going to start again. All right. Here we go. Can you see my screen, Robin?
Yep. I see PowerPoint loading.
All right. Let's just pretend that none of this ever happened. And I'm going to go back to that slide. And, of course, we'll erase the tape so that nothing ever did happen. All right, can we do this again? All right, we did this slide. Now let's go to this one. Now let's say you have a customer experience strategy. How does great information have an impact on that? Well, it's about consistency and high quality across every single touch point. And a better experience, for example, when selecting, buying, preparing, installing, operating, maintaining, servicing. But it could even start with the buying process, with the selection process, not just at the point of usage. What about customer support? If you have a customer support strategy, great information means a better customer experience when they're preparing, installing, and so on. And that translates to, if you've got a better experience and you've got better content, translates to fewer requests for support, fewer callbacks, and so on. Perhaps you have a customer satisfaction strategy. You can see that there's some overlap here, right? There's a lot of the same things, but there's also some differences. A geographical expansion strategy, a time-to-market strategy, a liability reduction strategy, and cost reduction strategy. So all of these things, perhaps more than one, may be slides that you want to use, but don't use them all. Please do not use them all, because of course your company doesn't have a strategy in every area, and not to mention being repetitive, as you saw, it would make you look ridiculous. You really need to pick one or perhaps two. You could certainly talk about cost reduction, perhaps not as a strategy, but you could talk about cost reduction as a consequence. So what sort of savings might we expect? I'm going to take you to the spreadsheet that I used to create this data in a moment. This is just sample data. I'm going to show you how to generate your own data in a couple of minutes, but you'd want to show total savings and just cost savings. So it would show when you went from negative, say, to positive, or in the case of total savings, which includes soft benefits as well, then conceivably you're cash flow positive on the first year, in the first year. Cumulative cash impact, again, this is sample data. I will show this to you in a moment. So now, again, talking to the executive team, so which approaches did we consider? Well, we could increase the size of our editing team to produce better quality content. That would help us improve our language. That would help us enforce our style guide, improve consistency, but it would slow us down. It would introduce higher costs. It would certainly underutilize skills of these editors when they're focused on copy editing, when they're focused on things that the computer can check. When you have a whole round of author edit, review, and then update, and then check again, that's a lot of money and time to spend when those are the kind for errors that could be caught at the point of authoring with some automation. And of course, a disadvantage of having human editors is that it is subject to individual variation. I think the most important point of all of these is it's about underutilizing very skilled, very knowledgeable people to have them correct copy problems. Instead, have them focus on fundamental content problems like this is wrong, or this isn't a good way to tell the story, or the sequence isn't right. Things where human beings can really make a big difference. Or we can automate language checking and relieve our editors from the low-value tasks and leave them free to focus on the high-value tasks. So what's the advantage? Well, consistently and uniformly apply style rules. Never gets tired of that low-level stuff. Helps reduce other costs in the process. The whole round trip of you create something that has issues, someone else has to catch it, and then you as an author have to reacclimate yourself to that content and fix it later, that's a very expensive thing. And if that problem isn't caught at that point in the process, but actually caught later in the process, that makes it even more expensive to fix. Disadvantage, well, you've got to implement this stuff. You've got to buy it and implement it and get used to it. And it may also involve more cross-organization collaboration and agreement than you've had to have before. The nice thing about me being an editor or an author, if no one's going to edit my stuff, is that I don't have to worry about anybody else and what they think. It's all my opinion. Of course, that's a problem, right? It's all my opinion about what's good. So here's an example. We did an analysis of content optimization software available from various vendors, including Acrolinx. Again, this comes from a spreadsheet I'll show you in a moment. In fact, you could double-click on this table in PowerPoint to open that spreadsheet in Excel, but I'm going to switch over to Excel to show you. And the idea here, of course, is, and this is very loaded, we all know where we're here, so I'm not going to mince words. The idea here is to show that, look, we've done an analysis against a number of criteria that are important to us, again, use an Acrolinx and one or two other alternatives, and Acrolinx scored better, which is why we recommend Acrolinx. Most capable software, the largest provider in this area. They sell to more different companies. They have some strong references. They have broader support for languages. They've been at it more than anybody else. They've got lots of expertise. At this point, you should be able to say that other departments support your recommendation. You've talked already with marketing, localization, engineering, or whoever you need to, and they're already behind this recommendation. Here's an overview of Acrolinx. We've got some nice awards, and got some other stuff. How does it work? Very simply, we made this little slide so you could say, well, it plugs into our authoring tools. When the author presses the check button, the tool Acrolinx sends the text to a server, which checks it against our dictionary, our terminology, our style rules, and all the other things that we do, and sends a result back to the author, so the author can view those results and make corrections. So entirely automated part of the editing process. Doesn't eliminate the need for human editors in many cases, but it relieves them of the low-value work. Acrolinx also produces analytics that show how we're doing in terms of content quality improvement, also shows other things like usage results, cost savings, and from that we can even derive recommendations for improving further. What does Acrolinx check for? It checks for these aspects of language and interactively guiding authors to even improve their language. The example shows here that this phrase, make sure the fan blades can, says make sure that the fan blades can. Here's some Acrolinx customers that just from a select list, again, so your executives can see the kind of companies that we're working with. And then there's some nice reference testimonials you see from Dell, from Adobe, and from PayPal. And in fact, we'll eventually come up with some others as well. So what are our next steps? Our next steps after you approve are to issue the paperwork to Acrolinx, and here's what's going to happen once you say yes, we're ready to proceed. So that's your presentation. Now let's talk about the spreadsheets in the small amount of time we have left. Now this spreadsheet I want to point out, and again, this is part of what will be available to you when we're finished with this webinar. Be able to upload this and enter your own data in here. You see that there's a cost-benefit side of the spreadsheet. That's the hard savings. If I go to the next tab, there is the opportunity side, or the soft benefits side of working with Acrolinx. The next one is some calculations that drive some charts, and then we have those charts I showed you earlier. Right now you saw real numbers there with with real data, but the idea is that you can get these charts out of this, and then I also showed you the cash impact chart, how much you would spend and what it would cost. You may need some help from us to do this. And then, that one's awful to look at when there's no data, but that you may find useful too. I did not include that in the presentation. So you'd enter your data in cells that have this salmon color. You also, for the ones that are in this dark salmon color, you may want to change our numbers there from what we've established as a norm. So for example, you could say, well, I have 15 full-time authors, and the annual loaded cost per author is $100,000. Nice if you can get it, and that establishes a starting point for okay, so how much improvement do we think we could get, improve our author experience, our author efficiency if we had, if we used Acrolinx? And where does that come from? Well, it comes from relieving authors, say, from looking up terminology or looking up style. Since it's all built into Acrolinx, authors can save time. It also can save time in the review process because authors are getting the immediate feedback at the time that they wrote it rather than when they're now have become cold on the content. And similarly, you can go through and enter in the impact on editing costs, perhaps on translation costs if you translate to multiple languages. You can see that it copied over your number of full-time authors. And we have a number in here where we say, well, this is the annual output in words of each author based on what we know, but you may have different numbers. And then what sort of cost do you have? How many target languages might you have? What are you paying per word? Say 20 cents. That's pretty high. And then how much do you of the content that you create do you send for translation? Say it's 70%. And that shows you what a calculated cost is. You could, of course, as it says here, if you know your translation budget, you just enter it right here and skip all those other ones. We don't have time to go through all of these calculations, but I think you understand this idea. If you do have questions, I would love to hear from you on this. And then on the opportunity side, what sort of impact could you have on customer retention? Even if they're very small numbers, it can have a big impact. Now, these, of course, are very soft guesses. It's really hard to say, well, if we improve our content, would we improve customer retention by 0.1%? Could happen. Would we improve customer acquisition by a similar amount? Could happen. We made up numbers here because we really don't know. We don't have any customer data that tells us what numbers to put here. So that's why these are soft benefits, right? That's why these are just estimates. And that's why when you see these ROI charts, that's why there's two of them. Total savings, which include the soft benefits, and as well as just the hard savings only. You go back in here and with the help of your account manager, you'd enter in what the cost of Acrolinx would be. And so this would give you the cost side. We've already got some benefits side. And then that's where we get into, so here's what your expected savings would be. And these charts would update automatically if we actually had numbers in there. Somewhere in here I can open up, I think I can go to some sample data right here, and you can see we've filled in numbers in all of these spaces on the cost page, on the opportunity benefits page, and then there's the ROI charts you saw in the presentation. So I know that was quick, but I hope that was at least useful as an overview for how to use these spreadsheets. Now, the other spreadsheet I wanted to show you was this comparison spreadsheet. Now, what we did was we said, okay, we're going to set the score to be one if Acrolinx or another product rates low for this category, two if it's medium, and three if it's high. What we didn't show is what weight do you give this? How important is this to you? So we put the weight, the category weight, in this column. So we said, well, experience is a 3. You may say, well, no, it's not, it's a 2. So you can adjust the weightings of these things. We did try to do something that made sensible here in terms of weightings, but you may have other criteria. So you can change the weight, and then these other scores are just calculated. So you don't do anything in these spaces. You put the scores in here. So whoever you want to compare us against, then you put their numbers in, and then this gives you a quantitative way to show why Acrolinx. So very simple. That's all there is for that. And in fact, that's all there is for this presentation. So I know we're 3 minutes over. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. There are, believe it or not, no questions, and yet there's quite a number of you who stuck to the bitter end. So congratulations on that. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. One thing I would like to know, though, if I may ask, don't go yet. Oh, no, wait, there is a question. Yes, you can get these slides, and the answer is very soon now. I don't know if you have an answer for that, Robin.
Probably the next day or so, we'll be able to send those out.
Right.
And
so
yeah,
we'll
we can send the spreadsheets too.
Exactly. We'll send the spreadsheets, we'll send the slides. We'll not send them, but we'll put them on our website. We'll send you a link to them, and we'll also have available the recording. So you'll have all of that. There is one question I would like to ask you. I've got a little polling question here. I'm curious about your answer. This is always a little, hold my breath here. But so the question is, how satisfied are you with the information that you received? Are you very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, you're not sure, you don't want to answer, you don't want to hurt my feelings, it's okay if you hurt my feelings. I ask this question a lot. And you're all very kind. Okay, so far, everyone who's voted, and not all of you have voted, have said you're 100% satisfied. So that's nice, or very satisfied. You didn't say 100%. But I'll just go ahead and share those results. So you can see what you said. I appreciate it. I'm happy to do this. Going back to the last slide, again, we will have the entire kit, as I said, slides, presentation, recording, and spreadsheets all on our website soon, and you'll get that information. And if you've got any questions, I really wish you would send me an email. If you've got any challenges as you go through this process, talk to me about this. I would love to hear from you. I'd like to improve this over time, and your experiences, your questions will help me improve it. Plus, I'd love to help you with the process. Naturally, this is a process that matters to us too. So that's great. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate it. Glad to have your time. I hope you all have a great rest of the week and weekend, and holidays for that matter too. And Robin, thanks for your help on this. I'll see you all later, everybody. Bye-bye.